Washington, D.C. comes a history-making plane, the first Israel National Airways craft to land here. Arriving in the United States capital aboard the Constellation is a distinguished passenger, also making history. He is the first Israel Prime Minister ever to visit America. Welcoming David Ben-Gurion are representatives of the U.S. State Department, the Israel diplomatic staff in Washington, and prominent Jewish leaders. Flanked by Abba S. Eban, ambassador from Israel, and Henry Morgenthau, Jr., chairman, Board of Governors, State of Israel Bond Drive, the Prime Minister acknowledges his welcome.
We in Israel today are still in the pioneering stage, in pursuance of our guiding purpose of providing a home for all Jews who come to our shores in search of freedom and independence. We, too, have opened wide our gates. In our 3 years of statehood, nearly 600,000 immigrants have joined us, almost doubling our population. We, too, are in the process of restoring our wastelands, bringing cultivation and progress to areas who have lain derelict for centuries. We seek to illustrate to the Middle East as a whole the effectiveness of democracy as a system of government and as an instrument of national progress in the welfare of the individual. We are willing to defend human liberty at all times and with all our capacity. Our war of independence, fought after 6 million of our people have been exterminated by the Nazis, proves once again that the cause of justice, faithfully pursued, must triumph in the end. In our revival, we have been inspired by the message of our Bible and by the traditions of our ancient history, which elevate the dignity of man and the principle of justice, in which command us to love our neighbor.
The Prime Minister is a visitor to the White House office of President Harry S. Truman. To his host, Mr. Ben-Gurion presents a rare gift of friendship, an ancient menorah. Later, the exponents of democratic government confer at length. Their subjects, world peace and the economic development of Israel and the Middle East. While in Washington, the Prime Minister, still accompanied by Ambassador Eban, meets with Secretary of State Dean Acheson. The main topic concerns the strengthening of friendly ties in the Middle East. As head of a strategic free government, Mr. Ben-Gurion brings the American diplomat a vivid and realistic picture of the political situation in that vital area of the world, even as he also brings to the Secretary of Defense, George Marshall, the military picture as embracing the Middle East. Israel's role in democracy's protection of freedom is prominently on the agenda in informal but significant talks between the visiting Prime Minister and the head of the American Defense Program. Washington's National Press Club welcomes the visitor from Israel. Gathered here are the men who send the 48 states all the news of their federal government. And for this important assemblage, the Rosh HaMemshalah has these words.
As the man who had the privilege 3 years ago to proclaim the independence of the State of Israel, I am happy to take the opportunity of my visit to this country, my first visit as Prime Minister of Israel to any country outside Israel, to convey through you, the representative of the press of the country, the profound gratitude which the people of Israel feels towards the American nation for the constant aid which it has given to us in our struggle for national independence. Mr. Chairman and gentlemen, in the 3 years of the existence of the State of Israel, we have won a war, forced upon us by our neighbors. We have established the structure of our state. and they have brought home nearly 600,000 immigrants. These are our main achievements. They have been effected by a constructive revolution, perhaps never equaled, I believe, in so short a period by any country of comparable size. Today, after thousands of years of wandering and suffering, we are restored at last to the land of our ancestors. We are resolved to be faithful to the ideals that are our heritage. We shall support to the utmost of our capacity every measure which strengthens world peace and opposes aggression, which promotes understanding among the peoples and ensures equality of nations. Our policies as a free and sovereign people will be inspired by the universal aims of the United Nations. We shall cooperate untiringly with all who set their faces against the enslavement of the souls of men, and with all who cherish the ultimate vision of peace as conceived by the prophets of Israel, that men shall beat their swords into plowshares, and nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Thank you.
At his own request, the Prime Minister, with Mrs. Ben-Gurion, visits Knoxville, Tennessee, and Muscle Shoals, Alabama, to view firsthand the federal navigation, flood control, power distribution, and soil conservation projects. At Knoxville, the point of interest is Norris Dam, one of the first constructed in the Tennessee Valley Authority network. Mr. Gordon R. Clapp, Managing Director of TVA, is host and discusses with Mr. Ben-Gurion the comparative control and uses of water in Israel and at this project. The Prime Minister is extremely interested in the resettlement of populations in areas where the TVA needed land for its flood control program. He gathers data on scientific model farms and plants devoted to soil fertilization and praises TVA as one of the greatest construction achievements in modern history. The Prime Minister spends 2 days in the area visiting several dams, flying over the vast engineering layout, and even donning raincoat and helmet for a close-up look. Irrigation methods and rehabilitation of homesteads and soil were carefully noted by the representative of a nation which is carving fertile acres out of arid desert land. As his whirlwind trip across the nation continues, the Prime Minister pauses at the United States Military Academy, West Point, New York, and the grave of Colonel David Marcus, killed in 1948 while serving with the Israeli forces. Mr. Ben-Gurion lays a wreath, a Star of David, bearing this inscription, "The Army of Defense of Israel," and paying tribute to Colonel Marcus as a brave soldier and a great American who had come from afar to win our confidence and the affection of every one of us. To the Colonel's widow goes the Israeli Order of Independence. Now the great reception for the Prime Minister in New York City. In a parade through the big town's towering canyons, the visitor from Israel is hailed by 1 million people. A contingent of Israeli sailors, also visiting the United States on a goodwill mission, leads the motorcade on its route up Broadway. Heavy throngs lining the sidewalks and leaning out of the tall buildings greet the Prime Minister with shouts of Shalom, Baruch Haba. At City Hall, 100,000 persons see him welcomed by New York's Mayor Impellitteri, who lauds him as the great leader of his people. The mayor presents a scroll to Mr. Ben-Gurion, which describes him as a man of action and decision, who symbolizes for the citizens of this country the vigor and determination which brought statehood and independence to Israel, and whose position is assured in the history of Israel and the free world. Next, in New York City, a mammoth rally at Madison Square Garden to celebrate Israel's third anniversary and to mark the nationwide campaign for the sale of the State of Israel Independence bond issue of $500 million. Tonight, commitments are announced totaling $35 million for the purchase of bonds. Franklin D. Roosevelt, Jr. is introduced to the capacity audience. Mr. Morgenthau presents the Prime Minister, who is author of the 3-year program to place Israel on the road to economic independence. Pointing out that Israel now accepts 15,000 immigrants monthly, he calls for continued support.
We will do in the future our duty as faithfully and as fully as we have done until now. And we expect you to do likewise.
After New York, it's Princeton, New Jersey for the untiring Israeli diplomat. He visits the world-renowned scientist Dr. Albert Einstein, and the newsreel camera is afforded a rare opportunity, for not often these days does Dr. Einstein permit such intimate film portraits. After this friendly meeting, the Prime Minister motors to Philadelphia for another enthusiastic reception. Citizens of the city of brotherly love bid him welcome. With Harold Stassen, president of Pennsylvania University, he comes to Independence Hall, where the crowds are unrestrained and emotion builds as Mr. Ben-Gurion views the cherished shrine. Hear the famed cracked Liberty Bell. In an informal address, Mr. Ben-Gurion says the bond between a great republic and his small country is best expressed by the inscription on the Liberty Bell: "Proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all the inhabitants thereof." Now the flag of Israel is presented to the city of Philadelphia. Flowers and words of welcome in Hebrew by American youngsters. These and the enthusiasm of 8,000 persons eager to get close to the Prime Minister outside Independence Hall are memorable moments of this stopover. Across the continent to Glendale, California, and a West Coast welcome that brings home very close to Mr. Ben-Gurion. These are Israeli Air Cadets who came over several months ago for advanced training under U.S. methods. For the Prime Minister, a souvenir book of photographs of the Israeli Air Force cadets in training at Glendale. Hollywood Bowl and the tour's climax. 17,000 turn out to watch an extensive and colorful program in which many members of the film colony participate. It is here that the Prime Minister is described as a man with a dream by Lieutenant Governor Goodwin Knight. And it is here that Mr. Ben-Gurion tells how his country welcomes immigrants. Each is looked upon as an asset, he says, no matter how poor. All he has to have is the will to live as a free man. Words that symbolize this historic mission to America by David Ben.